Alright, so we've been on a retrospective series the past few months going through all of the Mario Kart games and ranking the tracks from each game. We have made our way all the way up to Mario Kart 7, so no more pointless intro, let's just go ahead and get straight into the rankings. Okay, coming in at last place we have N64 Luigi Raceway, in which it isn't even a bad track or anything, it's just really dull and forgettable compared to everything else. Just like in the original, we are just driving around basically two very long and slow turns, which can sometimes feel awkward to go around. I do like the adjustments they made to the ramped area on the outside of the two massive turns, but also if I had to guess, that probably is way less effective to go on than just going on a normal road. Okay, maybe a hot take here, but in 31st I got Daisy Hills. I have never found this track memorable at all. Even though there are other basic tracks in this game, there is just something kind of soulless about this one for me. The gliding section at the end is at least a tiny bit cool, I guess, but this has always just been one of the Mario Kart tracks of all time for me. Okay, at number 30 we got Cheap Cheap Beach, which is definitely here due to me already not really liking swimming that much in this game. It makes the controls way floatier and more uncomfy, so yeah, there are a couple exceptions for tracks I really like that are primarily underwater later on, but this is unfortunately not a case of that. I think here it is also due to the lack of a good theme or layout, because nothing here really stands out or makes me excited to play the track. Also, the cave section specifically is just really boring. Number 29 we got GBA Bowser Castle 1, which I think is where we really take our first step up in the ranking. Although it is far from spectacular or anything, it plays so much better than the original iteration here. For one thing, I like the ramp system in this game and how occasionally it turns into a glider ramp and how you can drive on the side into another ramp over the lava towards the end. Also, this track is short and sweet and to the point, which is nice. Still relatively mid compared to most of the other offerings in this game though, at least to me. Very similarly to the previous pick, we have SNES Mario Circuit 2, which although a part of a mid-little series of tracks from its respective game, they did enough to sort of make this stand out more here. For one thing, the glider ramp at the end is actually such a great addition, specifically with the yellow ramp rod thing on the left-hand side. Just like in the original, the plethora of grass also allows for good item usage as well to make the races more intense. Now once again we got another representative from Super Mario Kart, which this time is Rainbow Road. This is not an easy track, which especially for it being Rainbow Road I see as a pretty good thing. Now is it basic, especially for a Rainbow Road? Absolutely. It also doesn't help that this track is also in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe and is exponentially more fun in that game, but that's neither here nor there. Okay, now we have the first of two Wii Sports Resort themed tracks, and this one specifically I just found to be a bit more long feeling and more boring than the other. The theming is cool, don't get me wrong, but it being one long lap instead of the same lap 3 times makes it so I've always gotten kind of bored on this track personally. Aside from the little rock formation area, everything else here just kind of feels dull, even though it's from one of my most nostalgic games of all time. And up next we have the other iteration of this concept, Maka Woohoo. The fact that there were two of these makes me not like them both even more, because I get that now I have to race on this track feeling sometimes. The nostalgia factor is coming in so heavy on these two, if I'm being completely honest, and this one is marginally better than the previous one. I will say though, the ending section with the glider ramps is pretty awesome. Okay, now we get the first track in the entire game, and for it being a basic circuit track, I mean, what do you want me to say? It's just a basic circuit track. I mean, it's perfectly fine. It does steal a lot from previous tracks, like the little tunnel area from GC and Mario Circuit, or the pipe and ramp shortcut from Wii Luigi Circuit, but it's still fun. Even the beginning turn feels really ripped from DS Figure 8 Circuit, so definitely one of the more derivative tracks in the game. But thankfully this isn't ranking these tracks by how unique they are, it's by how fun and good they are, and on that basis this track is pretty solid. Number 23, DS DK Pass. This is where we begin stepping up towards the good tracks in this game. This is basically the exact same thing we had in Mario Kart DS, and I loved it in that game for some reason, I don't know, and here, same thing, it's just DS DK Pass. They added a glider ramp at the end, but aside from that, this is basically the same fun alpine race course we had before. Now at number 22, we got an interesting pick, Wii Mushroom Gorge. I love this track on Wii, but the mushroom physics just aren't nearly as fun in this game. Don't get me wrong, it is still a good track, but here some of the magic that was in the original is just kind of gone. I do like how the left-hand mushroom path in the cave area leads into a glider mushroom, which can also be utilized with the gap shortcut, but aside from that, it's just Mushroom Gorge, but just slightly worse. worse. Now once again we have another track coming from Mario Kart Wii that is slightly worse than the original. Shit, that applies to every Mario Kart Wii track in this game, Wii Koopa Cape. Now almost the entire track, just like in the original, is phenomenal, but then we get to the underwater section. Before it was so much better whenever it was enclosed and it had this glass aquarium feel to it, and now it's fully underwater, which I get it since underwater driving is a thing now, but it also does kind of ruin the vibe of this area. Also, there is no electrical current things for you to avoid, instead it's cheap, lame. Kicking off the top 20, we got Mario Circuit, which the impossible happened here and you get to actually drive inside of Peach's castle. Holy f***. Okay, granted it's only for like 3 seconds, it's still cool. The ending section is a little boring, but everything else I've always liked. This is a pretty lively Mario Circuit track. At number 29 we got Neo Bowser City, which is an interesting one. This is a relatively linear track that is almost completely surrounded by rails with very little off-road, but the theme is so cool here. I love the kind of futuristic and melancholic art style they use. The added rain makes it go from lively and upbeat to almost a tiny bit isolated and dreary. It's still fun though. I've always taken a liking to this track. The layout is pretty memorable and fun. Next up we got N64 Koopa Troopa Beach, which I really like this track in this game compared to the original. The ramps feel way better to go off of and the underwater feels solid here. And also, just like in the original, it's just a great layout with the shifting water mechanic and the cave shortcut in the middle. Yet another iconic retro track that was brought back in this game, we have GCN Dino Dino Jungle. The controls in this game make this track feel way more manageable than it did back on the GameCube. Now on the wooden pathway section in the middle, I feel confident enough to go down the skinnier areas. Aside from that, while playing all the tracks, I just had enough fun with this track to warrant putting it this high. That's about it. Now we got another Mario Kart 64 track here that by all standards I probably should hate. The turns are all very gradual and slow, which usually I would despise, but here I just had so much fun racing on this track, regardless of what version it is. The train is a really cool obstacle to have to pay attention to and somewhat gauge how you race on the track. Also, the included glider ramps makes it much more fun to race on, and of course the off-road too for that matter. Alrighty, Wii Maple Treeway. Although it's not as good as the majestic thing it was on Wii, it's still f***ing Maple Treeway. My nitpicks here are that the branches are way too much easier to drive on and the exclusion of the wavy bridge towards the end. Sure, they turn this into a glider ramp in its place, but come on, you can't replace this. Aside from that, it's basically Maple Treeway, barring a bit of difficulty. Now we have our final Wii track of the video, Coconut Mall. As a remake, I feel that this is the best translation of all the Wii tracks, aside from them making the escalators have arrows showing what direction they're going in for literally no f***ing reason. Aside from that, this feels the most true to the original form, which is why it's the highest. Alright, now we head back over to the Nitro tracks with Rock Rock Mountain, which wins the track being carried by a Fire Soundtrack Award. Obviously, I'm just joking, the track itself is great too. Specifically, the cave area is pretty cool, alongside the ending mountain section where you are practically driving straight up with how steep it is. Even the grass section in the middle is pretty cool since it's covered by trees everywhere to add some decoration. DS Airship Fortress was always one of my personal favorite offerings on the DS, and here, it's no exception. This is definitely one of the most derivative retros in the whole game. Like, honestly, I'm not even fully sure what's different about this one aside from the cannon being a glider ramp now. DS Waluigi Pinball, basically the same thing of my thoughts of the original iteration of this track applies here as well. Incredibly good theme, layout, and music for the track, however it's slightly too linear. Basically the entire track is closed in except for the ending pinball section, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, I just normally prefer tracks that are a bit more open. I do enjoy this track more in this game than I did on DS, and I'm not really sure why. I will say though that Nintendo changing the cannon to being a glider ramp makes the cannons way less cool to go through for some reason. Kicking off the top 10, we got Shy Guy Bazaar, which incorporates a really cool Arabic theme with its design. The layout is easily one of my favorites in the game, with the town section which then leads into some winding turns, which finally leads into one of the coolest glider ramps in the whole game. Also, I really like the aesthetic of the track taking place at night, it helps make this a standout. Number 9, we got GCN Daisy Cruiser, which makes the original, which was already great, even better. Now the pool area you can actually drive in thanks to the underwater driving, and the alternate route, which is definitely slower than the main route, is completely submerged, which I'll be positive it doesn't really matter since I never used that route anyway. And it's so short that who cares, I don't mind a bit of underwater. Other than that, it's Daisy Cruiser, so it's fun to play on, just like in Double Dash. Coming in at number 8, we have Bowser's Castle, which aside from the super long straightaway section, I think this is one of the best ones in the series. This is one of the few underwater sections that are really fun in this game thanks to the improbable physics of lava spewers everywhere, and also you get to drive through a cool spinny vortex barrel. Like I said a second ago, the long straightaway towards the end is a little too long for my liking, but it is still good enough for a strong top 10 placement. DK Jungle has always been a track very similar to DK Pass on DS or Dry Ruins on Wii that is kind of an unsung masterpiece to me. There's just something so fun about the layout of this track, between the glider ramp over the water and the quick fire jumps in the middle. All the turns are simply just fun to go off of, and design-wise the aesthetic is just so cool. If it weren't for how strong the top tier of tracks in this game were, then this would have a strong case to be top 5. This now brings us to the best retro track in the entire game, DS Luigi's Mansion. They killed this remake. The outdoor section, which was already great, is basically as good as it can possibly be now. This is thanks to the improved design and the hole in the gate that can be used as a shortcut, as well as the implementation of a ramp on the left side after the mansion. And just like in the original, the mansion section is so much damn fun to drive through. Alright, unpopular opinion time. Rainbow Road in this game is not my favorite track. It's still a fantastic track, don't get me wrong, but there is no way I would rather play it than the top 4 tracks. For one thing, it is one long lap, which is something that a lot of people like it for, but for me it just feels so long that it can sometimes feel like it's dragging on. The concepts at play are really cool, getting to drive on the moon or on rings or through a rainbow vortex thing. It's just for me I happen to prefer the top 4 tracks over this even more since they are just all on another level. Wario's Shipwreck is one of 2 tracks in this game that are primarily underwater that I think nail it. The theme of this track, going for a spooky ship theme, is so perfectly nailed that it helps to propel this all the way up to the number 4 spot. The layout is also a lot of fun. No part of this track ever really feels boring or anything. Coming in with our bronze medal, we have Rosalina's Ice World, which is filled to the brim with galaxy references, which of course doesn't hurt. We got more solid underwater stuff going on here, along with the fact that this is actually one of the more difficult tracks in the game. Thanks to the ice being slippery, you have to have a pretty good idea of how to handle your vehicle. Also, I love the long turn at the beginning because of how satisfying it is to go around. Now we have the other track that is also primarily underwater, or at least has a decent portion underwater, that is absolutely nails. Taking on the theme of a sewage system, it almost gives younger me the vibes of going down water slides, which to this day is such a nostalgic feeling. Once again, this is also a track with some difficulty thanks to having to avoid the piranha plants as well as some very tight turns that can be deadly to newcomers. However, the best track in this game is so easily Music Park. Not only is the theme here unbeatable, but the layout is so simple and intuitive. The turns are fun, the straightaways are even fun thanks to being able to trick whenever the music notes land. Everything here is themed around instruments and music which is used so creatively, whether that is driving over a piano or going over a percussive instrument for a shortcut. Well anyway, that's my ranking for all the tracks in Mario Kart 7, which means we only have one more game to go, and Mario Kart 8 Deluxe has 96 tracks now, so that's going to be a whole juggernaut to deal with. Thank you so much for watching if you made it all the way through, and as always, peace out.